2 minutes until showtime.
Everybody on YouTube and Facebook will be going live in about 2 minutes. I figure I'd get you on
Everybody
first.
on YouTube and Facebook will be going in about...
So just to make sure we don't get the echoes and everything, I put you on first to figure that out. And
1 minute until showtime.
1 minute until showtime. So we'll be there. Let me just pop up chat. Okay, that's better. All right, on Facebook and on Twitter, if you can confirm that you can hear me fine, there's no echo, there are no problems, there are no issues, that would actually be great. Now, let's see, how do I... Cool, everything sounds good. That's excellent.
Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Blog Talk Radio.
Thanks, everybody. We are now on Facebook, on Twitter. No, not on Twitter. Facebook and YouTube, live streaming. Tell your friends. Share this so we get other people to join. We've got, and we've also got Blog Talk Radio, of course. We've got a number of people on there. I've got both the chats operating, so you could potentially ask me questions on the chat, although sometimes the chat scrolls down and it's hard for me to see the questions. But feel free to try, maybe put it in bold or put it in all caps or something so I can pay attention. But the easiest way to ask me a question is to call me, 347-324-3075, 347-324-3075. And if you do call, then you have to press 1. Once you get on the show, you have to press 1 so I know that you want to ask a question. Now, I know some of you are from overseas. We've got somebody who says it's 1 a.m. and they're listening to me. And given the handle, English something, I assume they're in the UK. Then we've got a couple of people from Brazil. Yes, 2 Brazilians watching on YouTube, and a bunch of people on Facebook. And so I'm trying to monitor all the screens and follow everybody, and I will try to keep everything straight. Today is an open Q&A. You can ask me about anything. I don't promise I'm going to answer everything. Some questions I just don't answer. But hey, yes, Pam, you can ask me anything. Even you can ask me anything. And as I said, particularly in the case of Pam, I do not promise to answer the questions. All right. And stop the angry emojis. I don't understand the angry emojis. I don't. You. What have I done? I haven't done anything already, and people are angry with me. Man, objectivists is tough. All right. Okay. We got a question here. I'm going to take a phone question first. But Brandon, I see your question. You know what I'm going to do? Let me try something new. I am going to open up a Word doc and kind of copy paste the questions as I see them, and maybe that way they won't scroll away. See, I need my dream setup, which I'm working on. I'm going to get this starting January 1st. I'm going to have my dream setup. My dream setup, for those of you who haven't heard, is two 34-inch ultra-wide monitors. Two of them in front of me. It creates like they're curved. They are curved monitors, so they create a bit of a semicircle, and that way I can see everything. And I can see all of you guys, and I can keep track of everything. So I'm working towards that two semicircle 34-inch monitors in front of me. That'd be so cool. I'm already excited, and I don't even have it yet. All right, that was I got Brandon's question. We've got a question from Tom. Oh my God, this is going to be hard. All right, we're going to do that. And we've got a question from Rich, and I think that's it. And then I've got questions I got on email, just in case we run out of questions here. And then I think there's at least one question. Yes, one question from Ryan on YouTube. So I'll get to that one as well. And all right, but let's start with some live radio questions. And somebody asked me what monitors I'm going to get. I'm not sure yet. Probably the Samsung 34-inch curved monitor. I'm going to put two of them touching each other. It's going to be so cool. I'm going to have to get a camera to show you what my monitors look like at that point. But that's January. I'm going to be in a different location. Maybe we'll even have something nice on the wall behind me. That's going to be my new studio, but more on my move in January. In January, we're not gonna spill the beans before then. All right, hi, you're on the Yaron Brook Show, 952 area code. Who's this?
Hey, Yaron. This is Corey from Minnesota. How you doing?
Hey, Corey. I'm doing well. How about you?
Excellent. I'm looking forward to getting and reading The Morality of Finance. Yes,
please, everybody online right now, go buy my new book. My new book with Don Watkins, the Wealth Creators, The Moral Case for Finance. It's a really good book, particularly if you're in finance or you're interested in finance or somebody you know is in finance. Buy the book, buy multiple copies, give them to friends, give them to colleagues, and also bring me over. Bring me over and come and speak to give a talk on it. So it's a topic I love. So please buy the book. All right, Corey, what's up?
Okay, so I wanted to get your thoughts on the Matt Walsh video on self-esteem.
Oh my God!
A couple of podcasts ago, you said you were going to touch on that.
Yeah.
And I don't recall you hitting on that yet.
No, I haven't gotten to yet. I'm going to do a whole show, a couple of segments on it, because it's an important topic. It's a topic that's difficult to do in a quick Q&A, but I'll just say a few things. But stay tuned for a whole show on self-esteem, which I think self-esteem deserves. So a good living objectivism show on self-esteem. So Matt Walsh, who is in a sense a colleague of mine, I guess, because he's on the Blaze Radio Network, so it's easier for me to criticize him here than it is on the Blaze, is very religious, and he comments a lot on religion on the Blaze. And he did a video for Prager University. Again, Prager's very religious. It all fits. On the idea that you should have no self-esteem, that you just shouldn't have any. It's not that you should have bad self-esteem. It's not that you should have good self-esteem. You should have no self-esteem. You should never think about self-esteem. You should never consider the issue of self-esteem. Self-esteem, in his view, is irrelevant. Now, he goes on in the video, and it's worth watching because it's very tricky. Because the way he defines self-esteem, yeah, nobody wants that. Self-esteem, as he defined it, is narcissistic, false.
He equates it.
What's that? He equates it with narcissism and false.
Yep, exactly. I just suffered through that video.
Yeah.
I can't watch it again.
Yeah, so it's narcissism. He equates it with false self-aggrandizing. He equates it with what other people do to you. That is, other people praises it. So what he takes is the leftist conventional view of self-esteem. And he says, that's bad. We shouldn't have self-esteem at all. And yeah, that kind of self-esteem, the self-esteem where everybody gets a ribbon, the self-esteem where you never criticize anybody, the self-esteem where you don't fail a student, that's all pseudo self-esteem. That's the pseudo self-esteem movement. That's all nonsense. Self-esteem is not something you get from other people. So in that kind of self-esteem, I mean, it's not even a kind of self-esteem. That idea is a bogus idea and should be rejected. And I agree with him on that. But he throws the baby out with the bathwater. And of course, that's his ultimate intent. He knows that's not real self-esteem. He doesn't want to acknowledge what real self-esteem is. He doesn't want to acknowledge what he's really attacking. This is a tactic of intellectuals both on the left and on the right. They don't deal with the actual issue. They don't deal with what the real issue is. They create straw men and then they knock the straw man down. Self-esteem is the recognition of one's own worthiness to live on this earth. It's the recognition that you are, I mean, if you've earned it, you have to earn it. And self-esteem is earned. And again, it's not earned by other people giving you something. It's earned through your own recognition of your own value and your own success and your own achievements. But it's a deep, deep recognition of, I can live on this planet. I can survive. I can thrive. I am fundamentally good at living, at surviving, at thriving, at flourishing, at being a human being on this planet, right? And without that recognition, life is very, very difficult. Now, of course, that recognition in and of itself is anti-Christian, because the whole idea is you're a sinner. The whole idea is you're not really equipped to this earth. And indeed, this earth is not that big of a deal. Who cares about this earth? The goal is the next life. The next life is where real reality is, where you really get to live, in a sense. So this world, this is too materialistic and worldly, and we shouldn't care about it. But no, this is the world. This is what we have. This is reality. And if you go through life not knowing you belong in this reality, if you go through this life hating this reality and hating yourself and not feeling and knowing that this is you, this is your land, this is your life, this is your planet, and you're worthy of it all, then life is meaningless. And this is the meaning of life. The meaning of life, to a large extent, is self-esteem. And somebody like the shooter in Las Vegas had a low self-esteem or had no self-esteem, right? He had, at least to some extent, a hatred of existence, a hatred of the world, a hatred of his own life, a hatred of his life in this world. He despised existence and he despised life qua existence. So he could lash out at existence by shooting people, by destroying, by knocking stuff down, by just lashing out. He was a real deep psychological I don't know how philosophical it is, but nihilist. This is what nihilism is at the deepest root. This is what many people on the left are. They have no self-esteem. They don't feel like they belong. So this is the consequence of having no self-esteem. I mean, the radical, the extreme consequences, the really, really all the way out there, horrible consequences of having no self-esteem. So, this is so for him to talk about there should be no self-esteem. Now think about it. Ayn Rand says that there are three cardinal values. Value is that which you act to gain or keep. He said three things that make life possible, that make life qua human being possible, that make human flourishing and therefore happiness possible. Three values that if you pursue these values, the world is open to you. The world is your oyster. Those three values are reason, purpose, and self-esteem. So for objectivism, self-esteem is enormously important, fundamental, cardinal. You cannot have a successful, good life without it. Go ahead, Corey.
And then I wanted to also get your thoughts on Gavin McInnes. Was he evading? I don't listen to him at all. I don't know if maybe you were in on the joke. It seemed like he was.
So I don't listen to Gavin McInnes either. I mean, I did an interview with him. It was presented to me as an interview, and it very quickly turned to my opinion of Trump. He thought my opinion of Trump would be positive. As all of you know, my opinion of Trump is very negative. And then it turned to immigration because, and my opinion of immigration is very different, obviously, than Trump's and of Colin McGuinness. And we went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And I think it was obvious if you watched the interview that I was winning that debate. Agree with me or disagree with me, he had no comeback. He had no argument. And I think his shtick, I think this is something he does often, not just with me, is when he is stuck, when he is talking to somebody and he can't answer them and he can't break through. You know, they tell you in talk radio that the purpose of having callers like you, right, Corey, is to make me look good, right? And I wasn't making McGuinness look good. And this is what Rush Limbaugh said a long time ago. The only reason I have callers is to make me look good. And it's true. That's what callers are for in talk radio. So as soon as he realized I wasn't making him look good, I was probably making him look bad, he claimed there were technical problems and shut down the line, right? Yeah. But that's a shtick. That's what he does. So I'm not offended by it. I got a lot of points across. I think a lot of people will watch that video and a lot of people recognize what happened. I got a thing on YouTube the other day from somebody saying, I'm glad I watched that interview with McGuinness because now I am going to unsubscribe to your channel because I hate you so much. Well, good. I mean, if you think my views on immigration are so despicable that you cannot subscribe to my channel, then you shouldn't. I mean, and that's fine. So I'm not sure what the attempt. I guess the attempt is to insult me or something. All right, Corey. Thanks a lot. Thanks for calling.
Okay, well,
You've got one more question?
Thank you for taking my call.
Sure. Thanks for making me look good.
That's what I was just going to ask you, so thank you. Yeah.
Thanks, Corey. All right, so as I said, it's an open Q&A. You can call me up and ask me anything. For those of you who are trolling me on YouTube, and particularly the anti-Semites among you trolling me on YouTube, go to hell. All right, we're gonna take another caller from Blog Talk. Hi, you're on the Yaron Brook Show. Who's this?
Good evening, Dr. Brook. This is Scott.
Hey, Scott, how's it going?
It's going pretty well, sir.
Good. So what's up?
I have two questions. Is that okay? Or is there a limit?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. First one is, what is the problem with privilege? And the second is, do you have any plans on writing fiction?
Oh, well, let me answer the second one first because it's easy. No, I will never write fiction. I can barely write nonfiction. And, luckily I have a great co-author, and you can't have co-authors writing fiction. Don Watkins, I think, is writing fiction. So, and he's a talented writer. I am not a talented writer. I don't have the... What's that?
Screenplays or something like that. You can have a co-writer and screenplay.
Yeah, but I don't have an imagination. I have no aesthetic. I don't have an aesthetic bone in my body. I mean, I appreciate art and I love art, and my life is surrounded by art. I mean, really surrounded by paintings and sculptures and music and plays and symphonies and opera and everything. But I cannot create art. And that includes stories.
Your 3 books are art, right?
What's that?
Aren't your 3 books nonfiction art? Aren't they art?
No, they're not art.
My friend would say the art of nonfiction.
No. It's the art of writing art nonfiction, but art in a different sense. Art is in being an artisan, as being skilled at something. But art is the recreation of reality based on the artist's metaphysical value judgments. Now, while I have metaphysical value judgments, I have no ability to recreate reality. Zero, none, nothing. So it never will happen, ever. Now, Leonard Peikoff is writing fiction, and Don Watkins is writing fiction, and I'm sure there are other objectivists writing fiction. Not me. It'll never happen. And if it happens, somebody shoot me or something, right? Make it, because it'll be embarrassing. So don't let me do it. Pam, if you're out there, it's your job to prevent me from writing fiction ever. If she's still on Facebook, I haven't seen her. I haven't seen her posting in a while. All right, Pam's a good, and well, I won't say old because she's not old, but old time friend, and a business partner in the very old days. Pam made me, because she her and I were partners in Lyceum, which was a conference business, which really got me into kind of organized objectivism, as you will, as a big shot. So Pamela Benson gets a lot of credit. Okay, what was your first question? Because I've forgotten it.
Privilege. It was.
Privilege.
Why is privilege wrong? Is there such thing as black privilege? Is there such thing as white privilege?
Yeah, I mean, I hate the term privilege as the way it is used, because what does privilege mean? Privilege means some special grant or favor that you have received because of, it really comes from the days of aristocracy, where the aristocrats had some, advantage before the law. They had some advantages granted to them by government, and so you were not equal before the law. You were not equal in rights. You were not equal in liberty. You were granted a privilege. You had privileges that other people did not have, but it was granted to you. And the way it's used today is any advantage that you have, whether it's because you were born, to a wealthy family, or whether it was because you were born white, which supposedly is an advantage. Whether you were born, I guess, heterosexual, or whether you are heterosexual, somehow all of those things give you an advantage that is recognized in some formal way as a privilege by the authorities, and that is just nuts, and it's offensive, and it's wrong, and it makes it impossible to have a discussion, because they use it as an immediate, you're irrelevant because you're privileged, so you can't even listen to you. You have no voice, you have no say, you have no worth, and you certainly have earned nothing, because whatever you have is a consequence of this privilege. Nothing is actually yours. And if you're white and heterosexual and male, then forget about it. You might as well go hide in a corner, put tape on your mouth because you can't say anything, and feel guilty for the rest of your life. So it's just a horrible way to treat people and to perceive reality. And this is the left has really spent a lot of time and a lot of effort in establishing this idea of privilege in order to shut people down. They use it now as much, if not more, than calling you a racist, right? Because they realize racist is a little tricky. Yeah, you have to show some evidence, and also people immediately go back, we're not racist. But privilege, wait a minute, I am white, I am male, and I am heterosexual. So therefore, automatically, I can't say anything. So I'm shut down. And so many people have internalized that, have accepted it, have endorsed it and internalized it, and now walk around, I need to feel guilty because I had a privileged life. Now there's certain sense in which one should feel good about having a good life. I mean, I certainly am happy that I was not raised by abusive parents. I'm happy that I was born in the 20th century, after World War II, so I was not killed in the Holocaust. But that's just this, but that's meaningless, right? Because it's metaphysical. I just happen to be born that way. But I certainly don't feel guilty for the fact that certain positive things happen to me. Certain positive things happen to me by accident of birth. Good. I mean, great. And if somebody's raised by parents that are abusive, I'm saddened by that they, but it doesn't mean that I am guilty because they are suffering. Their suffering is not a claim against me. Their suffering is not my moral condemnation. You should feel sorry for people who have been unlucky or bad stuff has happened to them. But you should also say to them, rise up above it. Lots of people have had screwy childhoods and done great. So at the end of the day, you're responsible for your own life.
Absolutely.
And go out there and make the most of that life, given whatever context you have. And yeah, some people have screwy context. I'm not denying that. I'm not pretending they're all born equal. Or that luck doesn't play a role in life. But some people take advantage of luck, and some people don't. Some people mess it up. And I don't deny the fact that some people have better genes than others, that some people have better upbringings than others. But then the question is, what do you do about it? I'm just not going to feel guilty because somebody else is suffering. And I don't think anybody should feel guilty because somebody else is suffering, unless you are responsible for that suffering. And then you should feel guilty, assuming it's not just. All right, Skylar, great. Thanks for calling.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Doctor. Take care.
Again, thanks for making me look good. So far, so good. We haven't had anybody trying to make me look bad, although they sure are on YouTube. But it's hard to actually read all the comments and answer the questions and watch for new phone calls and everything. So I'm ignoring most of the comments. But once in a while, I get a little racist on YouTube. Anyway, all right, let's keep going with the phone calls, and then at some point I'll switch to some written questions that I've pulled off of Facebook and YouTube, and I can also take them on the chat on Blog Talk. All right, hi, you're on the Yaron Brook Show. Who's this?
Hi, Yaron. It's Upton from Washington.
Hey, Upton.
I'll do my best to make you look your worst.
Thank you. I just saw you posting a question on Facebook Live. So you're also on Facebook Live, I see.
Yep.
Cool.
So I want to ask you, I started reading the Moral Case for Finance, and I got through the first essay in it that you did with Don Watkins. One of the questions I have is, I think you provide a really great defense of why is finance good, and then you go into the collectivist element of the how it's criticized.
Yep.
But one thing I've faced in my career as a software engineer is that people attack me. I grew up among communists, and an uncle of mine once attacked me when I was in my 20s, saying I'd never done a day of work because I'd never actually done a day of manual labor.
Yeah,
and
I mean, he's a real Marxist.
Yeah. Is there a fetishization of labor that goes into the attack on finance?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's no question, and it's partially part of the core of it, part of Karl Marx's attack on capitalism and capitalists, on CEOs, on anything that is not physical manual labor, and it goes deeper than that. I mean, these people are philosophical materialists. They view the world through the lens of it's all physical. So there is what they're rejecting, what they're denying is reason. What they're rejecting, what they're denying is the efficaciousness of human reason, the efficaciousness of the human mind, and the idea that even for manual laborers, the mind is what guides their work if they're any good at what they do, right? They're not monkeys. They're not mules that are just, but they actually portray them as mules and as monkeys, because whether it's the capitalist, whether it's the financier, whether it's the CEO, whether it's the manager, or whether it's the laborer in the janitor in your building, the Marxists deny them the capacity to think. They deny them the capacity to engage in reason, and that is what ultimately proves their labor. And to do this, they go through massive evasion, right? Because your uncle knows that you go to work. He knows that you're creating something that people use that enhances people's lives. So he has to evade all of that and focus just on one thing, which is the mind doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is muscle, because it's about physical labor. And so they're massively immoral. So this engages, Marxists are engaged, particularly if they're older than 20. They're engaged in massive evasion and in objectivism, if you're evading, you're immoral. So I would say Marxists over a certain age are all immoral. They're bad people. They engaged in clear evasion of the facts of reality. And what they're trying to negate is not capitalism. What they're trying to negate is reason. What they're trying to negate is the thinking human being. What they're trying to eviscerate is the mind. And if you think about it in those terms, that's much more evil than a debate between capitalism and socialism. This is a debate between human beings as monkeys and human beings, as a rational animal, as Aristotle would say. That makes sense?
You don't think it's reasonable for? Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. But do you think you couldn't possibly reasonably make the error as an adult of just not being able to make that connection of labor being connected to the mind and then the mind producing value? It just has to be a really core evasion.
I think it does. I mean, given history, given the computer technology, I mean, Ayn Rand said that she couldn't have developed her ethics without the Industrial Revolution, because the Industrial Revolution really embodied what it meant the need for reason in human life in order for human beings to flourish. It showed, that you could flourish. Because before the Industrial Revolution, we were so poor, subsistence farmers, there was very little flourishing going on. Suddenly it showed that human beings could flourish, and they could flourish particularly materially, but also spiritually, because of this amazing, robust use of reason all around us, right? All over the place. And that's what the Industrial Revolution. Now think about, multiply that by 1,000. Computer revolution. You can't argue that it's muscle anymore. There's no argument that it's feasible to an adult human being that value is created by muscle once you get a computer revolution, once it becomes so obvious that these everything involved in a computer is the invention of a human mind. There's no just taking materials from reality and maybe pounding them together. I mean, that's ridiculous even to say about the Industrial Revolution, but there's some element of that. You could somehow excuse people. You cannot excuse them today with computers. So your uncle has no excuse. Clearly it's evasion.
That makes sense.
Clearly it's immoral. And my uncle's exactly the same way, so don't feel bad. I had an uncle who was a member of the Communist Party in England for many years, and then he married an aristocratic woman from Portugal and landed up living in a big, he died a few months ago, but he landed up living in a big castle with lots of money that he inherited from his wife, and became an armchair communist, and then he gave up on communism, and then he was searching for his Jewish roots or something. And then I've got another uncle who is a social worker in London, and I have nothing against social workers, but he has a picture of Marx in his house, and he is a dedicated socialist in the old sense, Marxist socialist. So I have it all around me in my family. Now, not all around me because I don't deal with my family much, that part of the family because of that. But yeah, I know the feeling.
All right.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Great. Thanks for calling. And yay, continue to making me look good. This is good. All right. We've got a lot of questions today. This is good. Okay. Let's see. Okay, I'm gonna go take another caller. We've got 4 callers still. Hey, you're on the Yaron Brook Show. Who's this?
Aloha.
Hey, Stuart. It's been a while.
Yeah. May I ask 2 questions?
Sure, but ask them one at a time because I can't, as you could tell, even before very short questions, I can't retain more than one question at a time. I'm getting old.
Okay, I've been listening to your lectures on the history of the Middle East and Islam, and they're very good.
Thanks.
And because of that, I want to ask you about the specific inaccuracy I keep hearing leftists and libertarians repeat all over and over again, and it boggles my mind why no one corrects them. And I want to ask you why you think this goes uncorrected these days.
Well, which one is it?
The inaccuracy is even in that Ben Affleck movie Argo, which won the Academy Award. So what they say is this. They say, this is why radical Muslims want to destroy the United States. They say it's because in the 1950s, they pretend that the Mohammad Reza Pahlavi in Iran was not the hereditary monarch. They pretend that didn't happen. They say Mohammad Mossadegh was democratically elected the head of state of Iran, and he stood up to the oil companies. And therefore, on behalf of the oil companies, the CIA deposed him and installed Mohammad Reza Pahlavi as the head of state in his place. And then they say, well, Ayatollah Khomeini was sympathetic to Mohammad Mossadegh, and that's why, after the revolution, radical Muslims have had a grudge against the USA. So they say, all terrorism by radical Muslims was caused by the CIA overthrowing the democratically elected head of state of Iran.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's so many things wrong with this, and the least problem with it, in my view, is the history. Because the history has some elements of truth, but who cares about the history? Because the history is irrelevant. Because the fact is, not a single Muslim radical cares one iota about some secular government that was deposed in Iran in 1957, I think it was, 56 or 7. Anyway, they don't give a damn. They don't care about some prime minister who lost his job. Since when do they care about elections or care about what the CIA did? They don't give a damn. That is not what motivates them. It's not what drives them. And and this, I've been saying this since 9/11, because all you have to do is read, and I do this in my course on Islamic totalitarianism. Go read Said Qutb, go read Hassan al-Banna, go and read Osama bin Laden, and they don't mention Iran. They don't care about Iran. Certainly not 1957. Later on, they mention those who write post 1979 write raving commentary on Iran and Khomeini, so they're inspired by him. But they don't care about that history. It's not what motivates them. It's complete ignorance and misunderstanding of the motivation of these people. And again, it's some extent, it is, so there are two things going on here. One is a deep, deep hatred for America, which some libertarians and many people on the left share. They hate America so much that it is the villain in every story. It doesn't matter what the story is. Problems in Latin America. Well, that's because we deposed this and we intervened in Nicaragua in the 19th century. And there's communism, and Cuba is all our fault because we did whatever. Everything's our fault. Everything is America's fault. They hate and despise America deeply. I mean, Obama was this type of lefty. He hated America. He was the first anti-American president. Trump is the first person who has no clue what America is. I have to slam Trump, guys. But Obama was the first person who hated America. So one issue is that, what was the other issue? So one issue is that they hate America and therefore they blame America for it. The second is that they don't understand the role of ideas in history. So when they look at history, they need to have like a billiard ball cause and effect. So if Muslims do something to harm Americans, it must have been Americans who did something to harm Muslims. And if Americans harmed Muslims, there must have been something that made Americans do that. And that was oil. So it's driven by money, motivation, and then revenge. Those are the only thing they understand because they're materialists. It goes back to the earlier question by Albertine. They really are materialists. Even the libertarians many of them have a Marxist tendencies. You see that in their opposition to intellectual property. They are a labor theory of value. Some of them support the labor theory of value, and generally they opposed kind of reason and the idea of the efficacy of reason. So they attack the idea that ideas drive the world. They need this billiard ball causation that is driven by materialism, by money, by power. Everything's money and power. Nothing's ideas. So if the Muslims attack us, it must be because of money or power or something we did to them. It can be because they hold an ideology that hates us. Now, as I've seen you point out in a post on Facebook, I think it was, the history's wrong as well. But it's not even worth going there because it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant because it doesn't matter. Even if the United States did what they say they did, it wouldn't matter because that's not why they hate us. It's not why they're driven towards us. And, people like, what's his name? Bernard Lewis and Daniel Pipes, they say this all the time. So they don't maybe redo the history, but they emphasize the fact that the motivation is not driven by that, even if America did something inappropriate, which it didn't, it turns out. Well, it's questionable what America did, and the CIA involvement, whether they should have been involved or not, is questionable. But it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant to the issue at hand. And our overwhelming support for the Shah, one could put in question whether we should have been as supportive of the Shah or not. Although he clearly modernized that part of the world dramatically. But again, all of it is absolutely irrelevant to the question at hand.
Well, thank you.
Sure.
Well, may I ask the other question?
Yes, absolutely.
So I hear some people saying that when people come to the West, in order for them to respect rights and freedom and property, first they need to have come from a culture that already had to go through its own European Enlightenment or its own equivalent. And people are telling me the problem is that all these people are coming from these other cultures that never had an Enlightenment. They come to the West, and to them rights and freedom are incomprehensible. It's like plopping a caveman, into the West and expecting him to understand all the customs. So these people are telling me that the only people who should be allowed to immigrate to the West are people who come from cultures that already had the Enlightenment or some equivalent, and everyone else should be blocked from coming to the West.
Given that Russia never had an Enlightenment, I guess Ayn Rand shouldn't have been allowed into the West. Most Jews who came to the United States in the 19th century came from little shtetls. They knew nothing. They'd never read an Enlightenment figure. They didn't come from Enlightenment societies. Ukraine was not exactly an enlightened place. Poland in the 19th century was not exactly an enlightened place. And I would even argue Sweden in the 19th century, pre-1870, was not an enlightened place. I mean, it's absurd. It's deterministic. It has a low view of human nature. It's anti-factual, anti-free will, anti-intellectual. I mean, look at I get rides and taxis in New York or Uber or whatever, and a lot of the drivers, for example, are blacks who've come over from Africa. I want to tell you that a lot of these blacks who come from Nigeria and come from other places in Africa know about the values that America represents 100 times better than many college students at Brown University. So it's, to say this is bullshit is to give it too much credence. It just makes me so angry. So that's one. It also shows how deeply insecure these people. They're so afraid of the other. They're so afraid. They hold their own values at such low esteem that they think, oh my God, the barbarians are coming and we'll never be able to convince them. Well, that's pathetic. That's pathetic. If you believed in your values, if you understood them, if you're willing to stand up for them, if you're willing to fight for them, of course you could convince them. They're human beings. As barbaric as maybe they were, they chose to come to America. That shows that they're a step above everybody else who didn't come to America, right? Now, if you really were worried about this and you were really concerned, then the solution would be don't give citizenship to first-generation immigrants. And I'm fine. I would be fine with that. I'm open to that solution, right? Don't give citizenship to first-generation immigrants. I've suggested that it should be easy to come into the country and hard to become a citizen, hard to get the vote. Fine. Propose that as a solution. But what they want to do is, and this is what makes me this is what bewilders me so much. They want to give the government the authority to define what barbarism is and what American values are. They want to give the government, the Obama administration, the Trump administration, the Jimmy Carter administration, the FDR administration, the Nixon administration, any one of those administrations, they want to give them the power to define the principles that define America, or to define the Enlightenment, or they want to give professors at Brown, who are going to be consulted by the politicians, the ability to write the entry exam into the United States. I mean, the idea that we want freedom, that we want liberty, that we want the government off our back, and the solution to that is to give the government power over ideas is crazy to me. Crazy, right? I mean, isn't it enough that they have the educational institutions already? Now you want to give them the power to define what America is and to use that on the borders? I mean, can you imagine who the Obama administration would let in and who they would exclude? I mean, as it is, our immigration policy is so stupid that we exclude from America the most talented, the most able, the people who would most bring value to our society, to all of us as individuals. We exclude them because our immigration policy today is so stupid. They want to make it even more stupid by handing over the reins of control ideologically to the government. I mean, there is no more important an idea than the separation of government from ideas. Government has no ideas. It's a blind, what is it, the Lady Justice holding the sword and the weights of justice, and she's got a blindfold on because she's not about ideas. She's about executing justice. And that's what the government is. It's a protection. It's there to protect us. It has a very narrow realm of responsibilities. And it's not in the business of defining what capitalism is or what socialism is or who's good or who's bad outside of the context of protecting us from criminals. It is not responsible for figuring out any of these things. It should be protecting us from crooks and thieves and the only philosophical issue it should be dealing with is defining objective laws. That's it. So the idea of giving government all this power is just so ludicrous. And of course, what it says about, again, I've already said it, but the idea that people are too stupid and the people are too barbaric and the people and these guys, these so-called objectivists, are going to decide in the name of the government. They're going to hand over that power to the government, and they think they will be the ones influencing the decision maker. Give me a break. All right. Now you made me angry, Stuart. I don't think you made me look good. I think you made me look angry. All right. Well,
thank you.
Sure. I want people from, thanks, Stuart. Really appreciate the call. I want people from all over the world, anywhere. I don't care what culture they come from. I don't care what culture people come from. I want people to come who can take care of themselves, who can work for their own living, who will not rely on welfare. I want people who, I don't need them to understand what America stands for. If I had confidence in my own values, and if I had control over the school system, then forget it. I mean, their children will become real Americans. I mean, imagine if I suggested, in the name of liberty, kicking out all the people from America who don't agree with me on what liberty means. I mean, why can't I kick them out? They are initiating force against me. This is the logic of these people, right? They're initiating force against me. They're taxing me. They're voting for Democrats who then tax me. So if they're voting for Democrats who then tax me, can't I, in self-defense, push them out of the country, kick them out? America is the land of the free, right? So if you don't believe in freedom, out you go. Who cares if you have citizenship? We'll revoke your citizenship. We could have a test that all Americans could qualify. What would happen then? All right, I keep, we talk about these immigration issues over and over again. I hope there are not a lot more questions about it. All right. Hi. You're on the Yaron Brook Show. Who's this?
Hey, Ron, this is Michael.
Hey, Michael. How's it going?
Yeah, I think you remember me. We had a debate a couple months back.
Wait, you called in?
No, we had a debate. Me and you got into the DMs and we had a debate on Jordan Peterson.
Oh, yeah. Debate on Jordan Peterson. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I don't want to bring it back up, but I've watched it again, and I want to follow up on a question I asked you that you never answered during the debate.
Sure, I doubt I never answered it, but I'll try again.
Well, you didn't, but I think you were about to.
I might. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, well, we was talking about how the relevance of suffering, right? And you was saying suffering, and I quote, is irrelevant. It's the incidental. And the point that I was trying to make, see, you're very well gifted verbally, way more than I am. And that was my first public debate, so it was kind of hard for me to articulate what I was thinking. But
that is fine.
This is what I was saying. There is no joy or happiness without suffering, because we use suffering to gauge goals and happiness. It is crucial. And just for an example, the recognition of suffering is crucial to the human experience. For example, in the 17th century, having indoor plumbing, I don't know if it was around then, but it was a luxury.
There was no indoor plumbing in the 17th century, but okay.
Okay, well, whenever indoor plumbing started, it was a luxury.
Yep.
Now it's all part of the norm. The feeling is ambivalent in nature.
Yeah.
The standards have changed.
Yep.
So one could argue that daily recognition of suffering is required for human flourishing, because without suffering, you don't know what joy is. You have to have something.
Oh, I don't buy that. Look, I don't buy that. And it's what the argument you're making is not Jordan Peterson's argument. The argument you're making, it isn't. It isn't. I mean, I've watched more Jordan Peterson since we talked, and it's not. So everybody's trying to whitewash Jordan Peterson. And, I love the guy because I watch him all the time, and he's really smart and he's really good. So this is not a knock on Jordan Peterson. But and I think Jordan Peterson will agree with me. I think I'm interpreting him right, and you guys are interpreting wrong. You guys are trying to make him out to be something he is not. He's not an objectivist, and he's not consistent with objectivism, and he would reject objectivism. He would throw the book out the window. He does not agree with almost anything in objectivism. And I think Jordan Peterson would say, Yaron, you're absolutely right. Because I don't think for a minute he is delusional enough to think that what he's advocating for is consistent with objectivism. Now, maybe he's right and objectivism is wrong. I'm willing to concede that that's a possibility. But I'm not willing to concede the idea that Jordan Peterson is consistent philosophically with objectivism, because he's not. Now, let me get to the suffering question. Metaphysically.
Yes, please answer it. Just act like you're right, and Jordan Peterson doesn't believe that. I would love to see you argue against that.
Absolutely. Metaphysically, there are two things that exist for human being: pain and pleasure. We have a pain-pleasure mechanism built in. One is not primary over the other. It's not pain that makes pleasure possible or pleasure that makes pain possible. They are two features that exist in human existence. From when we are born, we have the ability to suffer pain, and we have the ability of pleasure, to have joy. We have both abilities, and babies experience both. And to say that what's fundamental, what's metaphysical, is not just suffering, but the tragic, that life is fundamentally tragic, is to give death and suffering too much emphasis. And let me just be clear about this. Ayn Rand would flip out to think that you would say that. I mean, Ayn Rand considered suffering, and she writes about this, so this is not me inventing what Ayn Rand said. She considers considers suffering incidental, unimportant, not relevant to life. And if you think about the first time Dagny sees John Galt and what she sees in his eyes, it's the eyes of a man who doesn't let suffering make any difference in his life. Suffering doesn't go deeper than the momentary. It's insignificant in his life, and that's what makes him John Galt. So, agree or disagree, that's not Jordan Peterson.
I didn't call to debate with you or nothing. I just want you to answer the actual question.
I answered it.
I mean,
I just did.
You didn't, because you said we can suffer and we can, but I'm explaining to you why it is crucial.
And I'm
to
explaining to you
suffering.
that it's not, because I mean, I recognize suffering. Nobody is ignoring suffering. But what Jordan Peterson does is it gives it primacy. And I'm rejecting the idea of it being primary. Suffering does not define joy. Joy and suffering come into being, if you will, when we open our eyes, when we come into being. They are equal parts of life. One is not superior to the other. One is not greater than the other. One does not make the other possible. They are both in our biology relevant at the same time. You can stroke a baby and you can give them pleasure, and you can pinch him and give him pain, and biologically those are equal. One is not superior to the other. Suffering is not what makes joy possible. That is absurd.
Not in the concrete. No, that's not what I'm arguing.
In
But
any context,
what I'm
not in any context.
Well, yeah, it does, because you don't know what joy is without
That's
recognizing
just not
suffering.
true.
It's just a fact.
That is just,
It's a logical fact.
that's not true. You don't need the contrast with pain
How do
in
you
order
know
to...
what joy is?
Because you get it from the pleasure mechanism, right? You get it from the fact that somebody caresses you when you're a baby and you feel good because of it, because it feels good. It's an emotion. It's a sensation, not even an emotion, of pleasure. That's what everything is based on, the sensation of pleasure and pain. That's how we start with those. And suffering is a consequence of experiencing the pain, and joy or pleasure is a consequence of experiencing pleasure. So, and we experience pleasure as a primary, not as a derivative of suffering. So you don't experience joy because it contrasts with suffering. You experience joy because it contrasts with nothing, with the state of just being. I'm just being. Now somebody caresses me. Ooh, that feels good. Cool. Somebody pinches me. Ooh, that feels bad. Suffering. That's how it works.
I think the explanation is a little convoluted.
Well, that's fine. You can think that.
Second question.
You can ask me one more question, and then I need to go on.
I didn't call to make you mad, Yaron.
No, I'm not mad. I get passionate. I get passionate. I'm not mad, but I think you're trying to resist my answer. I think my answer makes complete sense. And if you think about it purely, if you take a baby, just think about a baby, think about the experiences of a baby, and think about what those experiences are, and you think biologically that before suffering there is pain, and that the fundamental experience of an infant is that pain pleasure mechanism, then I think you really start gaining an understanding of what joy means and what suffering means and what implications they have. And when you make the pinching, the suffering, the focus of everything you talk about, as Jordan Peterson does, you make that primary, that is really bad. It becomes the equivalent of original sin.
I absolutely agree with what you're saying, and I'm not
Good.
Trying to dodge it in any way.
Good.
I just think that you're parsing what I'm saying, but we'll move on. I just want to let you know. I agree that pleasure and pain are the real thing, and I'm thinking this is completely separate, and that's what I'm trying to make.
No, you build up the concept. You build up the concept of suffering from the concept of pain, and you build up the concept of joy from the concept of pleasure. So the first thing you experience, see concepts, and again, Jordan Peterson would not agree with what I'm about to say. Concepts are integration, abstract concepts like joy and suffering, are abstract concepts that are built up from concretes. And the concretes you start with as a human being are pleasure and pain. And if you build up the pleasure concretes, you get joy. If you build up the pain concretes, you get suffering. You can't have those abstractions without the experiences that build them up. And one of those is not more fundamental than the other. I would actually argue that in a healthy human being, the experience of pleasure far outweighs, in terms of importance and significance in life, far outweighs the importance of the pain and therefore the suffering. But that's not the impression I get from Jordan. And again, I say this with all the love to Jordan Peterson because I admire him and I think he's really interesting, but I don't agree with him.
Maybe I should have said happiness and suffering, but either way, here's my second question.
I would still disagree with you.
Well, I wouldn't, because I see them differently, but we're never going to get anywhere, and I want to ask the second question.
Yep.
I know you like to be right, but can I ask my second question?
Well, it's not that I like
Okay.
to be right. It's just that I am.
Okay, well, if you say so.
Yeah,
but, all right. I
Go
don't
ahead.
think you addressed what I was saying,
Yep.
but that's okay. How is it a sound philosophy to say that freedom of speech doesn't include protest, which is what you said during our debate,
Yeah.
but you cracking down or saying that Trump is somehow tyrannical for wanting it to make it harder for journalists to maliciously lie.
Because it's not his
Knowingly
job.
lie.
It's not his job.
What?
It's not his job. It's not the
is
job
his
of
job?
government to define what the truth is and to tell us. And this has nothing to do with protesting. It's not the job of government to tell us what the truth is. This is what they
That's
like.
not what I'm arguing.
Well,
That's not what I'm arguing. I'm saying if you can prove without a shadow of a doubt that a journalist is knowingly lying.
yeah. So
Knowingly lying.
Yeah.
That's different.
then what
That's
would you do?
different from
What should
the
you do
government
if you know a
telling what
journalist
the
is
truth is.
knowingly lying? What should you do? Not the president. What should you do?
Well, no. I'm saying I can't do nothing as a citizen. I can say, well, I'm not going to read them anymore.
Yeah, there you go. That's
That's
something.
a free market solution.
I believe in free
That's a
markets.
free market solution.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is there's a lot of people who vote who are predisposed to their own opinions, and they don't care if they're lying. You get what I'm saying?
So
isn't
what
a
is the
moral
role
issue
of
to let
government
them
here?
keep
What
lying?
should the president do?
What should the president do?
Yeah.
I mean, it's illegal to commit fraud, then that's selling something you don't have.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the same thing. You're telling something you know
So
is
you
not
want to
true
give the government.
in order
I
to
get
benefit.
what you're saying. So you want to give. Now we have, by the way, we have libel laws, which you can prosecute a journalist if they commit libel. And yeah, so we have the laws on the books to protect us from fraud, but you want the government to get into the business of defining when a journalist lies and when he doesn't lie, and going after them, not on issues of libel, but on anything. If they lie about the Earth being flat, or they lie about who's responsible for 9/11, the government should be allowed to go and then prosecute them. I mean, fine, but that's the end of liberty. That is the end of freedom. That's what the Catholic Church did, because they perceived Galileo as lying. That was the excuse they gave everybody, and they put him under house arrest, and they silenced him. When you give, this goes back to my argument earlier, you cannot give the government authority over the realm of ideas, over the realm of what is factual and what's not factual, unless fraud has been committed, there is monetary damages, somebody has suffered, and then you don't need the government. Then that person sues the newspaper, and we have plenty of laws on the books that you can go after those journalists. But it is the end of freedom and liberty when the government says NBC is a good network. No, sorry, NBC are liars. Fox, which lies every single day. They're all liars on Fox. Hannity is one of the biggest liars I've ever seen in my life, right? All of them are liars.
Yeah.
So Fox, they're okay. Why? Because in this administration, we like Fox and we hate NBC. The next administration, this goes back, loves NBC and hates Fox. So Fox are the liars. That is the end of freedom, the end of liberty, and that's where we're heading, because that's what Donald Trump is moving us towards. Now, Obama started this. If you remember, he attacked Fox for lying, and he was right. Fox at the time was lying, and he attacked them. Now Trump is doing the same thing, but Trump is doing it worse, because Trump is saying not only are they lying, and it's bad, but I'm going to rescind, or I will consider rescinding their license. That is a threat of physical force from the government. That is the equivalent of physical force. That's intimidation, and it's the end of freedom as we know it.
Everything you said, I agree with, but the reason I brought it up, look, I hate it when Trump says fake news. It's ignorant. It's just like a talking point. What I'm saying is, if you actually dig into what he's doing, the whole reasoning behind it is because he believes they are maliciously lying, and it can be proven.
But even that is not. But
those
even
libel laws are strong enough.
But Michael, even that is not true. First of all, libel laws are plenty strong. The only reason Donald Trump doesn't like the libel laws is because he's lost some cases where he's gone after people for libel and he didn't win. So he thinks he's such a narcissist. Everything is about him. But it's much worse than that because Trump lies all the time. All the time.
Absolutely.
Well, so you want to use him as an authority to tell us who's lying and who's not? Him as an authority to undercut the media? What's that?
I want the courts to be the authority.
Fine. So we've got libel laws.
Like
if we've got libel laws, then let's practice our libel laws. If you think that somebody says something that has caused you damages, which is what fraud and libel require, then sue them and go after them. And people do that all the time. Libel laws are used in this country all the time. There was that Gawker case. I don't know if you remember the Gawker case.
Yep.
Where Peter Thiel funded it, right? And they drove Gawker out of business. Gawker went bankrupt. Good. I mean, Gawker was filled with lies and they hurt people and people really suffered as a consequence. So an entrepreneur got together and they funded it and they went and they smashed them. The system's working as far as I'm concerned. Now, the system is not working because media, there's no objectivity in the media. Now, I agree that NBC lies. It's more than just bias. They lie. And you can see it in the coverage of Trump is sending this stuff on Obamacare. They lie about what he's doing. They lie about the consequence.
Yeah.
It's just horrible. But Fox does the same thing, and Breitbart certainly does the same thing. They lie about immigration. They lie about a lot of other things.
Absolutely.
So I'm concerned about the lack of objectivity in the culture. I'm concerned about the fact that we as consumers are not sensitive enough to differentiate between truth and falsehood, that we're not fighting for objectivity and not fighting for the truth. The last thing in the world I want is for the government to get in the middle of that. Because particularly this government, a government filled with liars, the government of the swamp in Donald Trump's terminology, because he is the swamp. He is the biggest swamp than anybody else in Washington, D.C. For them to get involved in deciding what is true and what is not, what is acceptable and what is not acceptable, is again, that is the end of the end of freedom. And look, if all that happened is Donald Trump said that and it would go away, then so what? It doesn't matter. It's just the president talking. But now what we've got is a Democratic president, Obama, going after the media, a Republican president, Trump, going after the media, and expressing the tool that he would use against them, take away their licenses. What's going to happen when the next president comes along and is really pissed off at the media? And what happened to the American people's sensitivity to these issues, right? Sensibility about these issues. They've now been primed to accept the idea that it's okay for the government to decide which media outlets are okay and which are not. That scares the bejesus out of me.
I will walk back that point because you are absolutely right, and that's a great argument.
Well,
I will
appreciate
walk back
that.
to my second question, absolutely. I still think you're wrong on the first, but
that's fine.
I love talking to you. I love talking to you. Thank you for taking my question.
I encourage you to read. Let me encourage you to read something. Ayn Rand's Objectivist Epistemology.
I haven't read that. So
the Introduction to Objectivist Epistemology, because she talks there about how we form concepts and how we get concepts like happiness and suffering, and how we build up to them, and what's how do you think about the relationship between concepts. And let me just say, I respect the question. I think it's a good question, and it's obviously a question intelligent people are struggling with, because you're struggling with it and Jordan Peterson's struggling. I don't think either one of you is an idiot. But
well, thank you.
I don't believe that happiness, that suffering is more fundamental than happiness. I think that pain is. But pain is on the same level as pleasure. Pain and pleasure are the things that we experience, and then we build from them abstract concepts. But okay, I really need to move on. Thanks, Michael. I really appreciate the call.
I appreciate you taking. I will read what you said. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, cool. We're getting good questions. There's a lot of stuff going on, and I can't follow YouTube. It's interesting, the different quality, the different type of debate that happens on YouTube versus on Facebook. It's just fascinating. All right, let's see who's next. I think this one's next. If you don't have a question anymore, I don't know, unquestion it, press 1 again. I don't know, do something, because it's harder for me to keep track of who's next. All right, hi, you're on the Yaron Brook Show. I was.
This is Kevin. This is Kevin from Arizona.
Hey, Kevin. Good to talk to you.
Hey, good to talk to you, Yaron. Hey, so I have a different question that crosses philosophy and business. I think a little more lighthearted.
That's fine.
But look, I studied. I've met you personally. I met Mr. Dr. Peikoff. I've studied Rand for years, and I thoroughly believe in the value of objectivism. And the one thing that I've run into in the business world, I'm an entrepreneur, is this conscious capitalism stuff. And instead of asking you what to define it, if you let me, I'd like to give you a 30-second overview of what I think it is.
Go for it.
And then you could correct me.
Absolutely, go for it.
This is the equivalent of what did George Bush call it?
Compassionate conservatism. Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's nothing more than capitalism with guilt. It's self-interest with guilt, like Bud Light. It's the same premise. It's the idea that self-interest is still bad, but you know what? Ultimately, I can reduce it to utilitarianism. Am I wrong, or what do you think?
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's an attempt to have your cake and eat it too. It's an attempt to be in business and to be an advocate for altruism at the same time. It's an attempt not to have to give up your morality, your beliefs. And so it's an attempt to rationalize away self-interest, the profit motive, the profit incentive. And to me, it's horrible because it's a sellout. They've completely sold out on what capitalism is. They completely sell out on the moral defense of capitalism. They're buying into the altruism, into the collectivism, but primarily the altruism of the left and of Christianity. So of the left and of the right. There is no conscious or unconscious capitalism. All there is capitalism. Capitalism is the system of freedom, of liberty, of property, individual property rights, and of the protection of individual rights by the government. The only job of the government is to protect individual rights. What capitalism depends on, thrives on, is self-interest. It's what motivates the capitalist, what motivates the participants, what motivates businessmen should be rational self-interest. But that's uncomfortable. Oh, selfish. That's bad. We don't want to be selfish. We want to help our employees. Well, what does that mean? You want to treat your employees well enough so that they work and stay loyal to you and they do their best so they're the most productive you can. But, I mean, conscious capitalism was created by what's his name?
Whole Foods, right?
Yes, the Whole Foods.
The CEO of Whole Foods, yeah.
What's his name, though? Oh, my God. John.
I don't know either.
It just slipped my mind. No, I know it well.
Maybe?
What's that?
Yeah.
Yes, the CEO of Whole Foods.
I think it starts with M.
Yeah. Now, it's true. Whole Foods can pay workers more than Walmart. But that's because Whole Foods caters to upper middle class and rich people. And Walmart caters to poor people. So Walmart, by definition, is going to pay the employees less. So you take, Whole Foods is conscious capitalism and Walmart is greedy capitalism. Give me a break.
I totally agree. So let me, if I may ask you a second question. Everyone's got a second question. I'm going to ask you for my second question, Yaron.
Go for it.
I have a deeper question. To me, again, I am not a philosopher at all. Not to your level at all. But if you were to ask me why do we have conscious capitalism, I would tell someone who I'm speaking to with. I said there's really two factors. One is there is that I think what was the pragmatism is the main American philosophy, or at least the major American philosophy grew. The idea of practical results, and I think business people are I think there's a certain value to having practical results. We got to do things now.
Yep.
But I think there's another factor. We live in such a concrete bound society. We are so emotional that anyone who comes not with expertise but with authority, who can think for ourselves, who can think for us, and they have some kind of recipe, that we accept that and we grab it. And that's why you have all these business fads every other year. What would you say to that?
Well, I think all of that is right, but I think conscious capitalism is deeper in the sense that I think it was founded by I remember I read his name. Stewart gave me his name on Facebook, which is embarrassing because I know the name well because I met him and I've talked to him. John Mackey from Whole Foods. John is a libertarian.
Yeah.
He believes in free markets, but he's also an altruist, and he's struggling. He's got this guilt, right? He's making a lot of money. How does that fit with his altruistic beliefs? And how can he be an altruist and a capitalist? So he comes up with this notion of, look, capitalism helps everybody. Capitalism is good for the workers, and it's good. Well, of course it is. You don't need a new theory to discover that. But, and we need to treat people better. But what does that even mean? And what's the context? And so it's an excuse for people who know that capitalism is good, but who are uncomfortable with the ethical beliefs. Now, look, Adam Smith did the same thing. Adam Smith said, look, capitalism works on the based on the self-interested behavior of everybody involved. The baker doesn't care about you. The baker bakes the bread for himself, and he's trying to make a living for himself, and he's trying to make a living for you, and that's what he does. And he says, but when we mix all the self-interest of everybody in the economy up, the invisible hand guarantees that the results are good for everybody, that everybody benefits, society, quote, benefits, right? Now, but he also says self-interest is low. Self-interest is a vice. It's not a virtue. It's only by mixing all the self-interest up you get the virtue. So basically he's saying if everybody commits a vice, self-interest, then the ultimate result is a virtue, the good of society. That's the origin of conscious capitalism. It goes back to Adam Smith, the first compromiser on this issue. As brilliant as he was as an economist, he was a terrible moral thinker. And he compromises the case from capitalism from the day capitalism is born. And that's one of the great tragedies about capitalism. About the history of capitalism.
If I could say one more thing, though,
Sure.
the one example of, I guess, in terms of methodology, because I've explained this point before, and people really sometimes just they're not able to differentiate. And so the example I give, I love military history, so I say, imagine asking an American officer in World War II and a Soviet officer, is Nazism bad? And they both say, obviously, Nazism is evil. But of course, the conclusion is correct, but the methodology, the very premises which they act on, are completely different.
That's right.
So that's why objectivists could agree with the same, at least some of the tenets of conscious capitalism: treat your people well, blah blah blah. But it's a completely different premise. It's in our self-interest to treat our employees well versus
absolutely. And what is well? And again,
guilt of doing it.
And again, what does well mean? Well means something different at Whole Foods and different at Walmart because the context is different.
Yeah.
And conscious capitalism doesn't recognize that all successful businessmen have to treat their employees well. Otherwise, they wouldn't be successful businessmen. You don't need a special.
Great point, Yaron.
You don't need a special term for businessmen who treat their employees well. It's success. It's called success. All right.
Great
Thank you.
point. Keep it up, brother. Keep it up.
I appreciate it. Thanks for listening. Thanks for calling. And by the way, everybody. We want to make to make this, I have a little inferiority complex because when I look at, Jordan Peterson's YouTube channel, and I look at God Saad's YouTube channel, and I look at all these intellectuals' YouTube channel, it's like pathetic, right? My YouTube channel is like pathetic. It's insulting, right? So. We got to change this. There got to be more of us. And the only way to get more of us is for you guys to share, for you guys to comment, take my videos, edit them, put them out there, do whatever you want with them. Just get them out there. If you believe there's an audience for this, and I certainly hope there's an audience for this. If not, I'm wasting my time. And you guys can't be my audience because there are not enough of you, right? It's what, I don't know. I get 5,000 to 10,000 people listening to my shows total. These guys get hundreds of thousands of people, right? And to long shows, it's not just, we need to turn my thing into sound bites, although that would help. Help, I guess. I'm asking you for help. First of all, go and subscribe to my YouTube channel, because if you subscribe to YouTube channel, first of all, maybe we'd get the comment section to be a higher quality. But subscribe to all my different channels. But the main thing, the thing that makes social media work, the thing that gets these ideas to really spread is sharing, not liking, not doing little emojis. None of that makes any difference. It's entertaining, particularly when you're scrolling at me and making ugly faces at me. But what really helps get the word out there is sharing. That's it. Now, everybody has an excuse why you don't share. Drop the excuses. Just do it. If you piss off your friends, then they shouldn't be your friends, right? In addition to that, go buy my new book. It's, again, like it's way down there on the list of Amazon. I really am getting an inferiority complex. I don't think anybody loves me. Go buy the book and do something. By the way, I'm going to have God Saad, I think I'm pronouncing it right, on the show. I'm actually going to do an interview with him in a week or two and put it up. I won't do the interview live with you guys, but I'll put it up afterwards. I think you'll find it interesting. He's quite a character, really smart guy, and I think it'll be interesting. So and maybe we'll get into a little bit discussion of evolutionary biology. I think it's interesting. All right, so come on, people, wake up. If we're gonna change the world, I can't do it by myself. You guys have to help me, right? You guys have to help me. And we can't rely on Rihanna. We can't rely on Kanye West, Adam, to do the work for us. I have no celebrity friends. Nobody's gonna do the work for you. You guys are gonna have to do the work. And by the way, Stuart and who else is there from Hawaii? Hawaii is just too damn expensive. You want us to come and do an objectivist conference there? Get Hawaii to be cheaper. And the way to get Hawaii to be cheaper is get those socialists out of government. It's so frigging, regulated and controlled that it's way too expensive. All right. All right. Let's go to our next caller. Let's see. I was worried before the show. I was thinking nobody's going to call. Nobody has questions. What am I going to talk about? Because I haven't prepared anything. I'm just doing this questions. I had piles of written questions ready just in case nobody calls. And we're going to go easily 2 hours today. We can't go over 2 hours. We'll go 2 hours and not finish the callers. Hi, it's you. Yes. Who is this?
This is Jeff.
Hey, Jeff. How's it going?
It's going great. I am a huge fan.
Oh, wow. Cool.
I don't know if objectivists even like having fans.
I like having fans. There's nothing wrong with having fans. Ayn Rand loved having fans.
It leads to success, so what the hell?
Well, it's people appreciate your work, and part of our work is to communicate ideas. And if there are people listening on the other side, it affirms that what we're doing is a good job.
Yeah, and social media is really driven by the desire for new ideas. We just don't have enough of them.
Yes, I agree completely.
And I think you have a real intuition for, looking at things in an objective way that haven't been looked at before.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
And I've been loving your political discussions, but I want to shift gears and talk about quality of life.
Excellent.
My partner of 26 years had a major stroke,
right. And
I'm stuck in this position where the medical community is keeping him alive, and it's not him anymore.
Yeah.
And I care for him. I have this romantic attachment to the idea of him.
Yeah.
But man, he's in a position where all he can do is suffer. He cannot move on, and
he can make the decision. He can't make the decision for himself to end it.
He can't make the decisions. I'm in charge of his medical care.
Yeah. No, I mean it's a very tragic position you're in. It's very sad, and a lot of people are in that position. Whether it's
and I don't want to, and I'm not here to get sympathy for the emotions.
No.
But I'm becoming very aware that there's a facility of living human beings where he is that are no longer the people they always were.
I agree.
And we're pretending it's still them.
Yeah, I mean, if it's somebody that you have a relationship with, and it's somebody you have a history with, and if it's your significant other in a sense, then you're going to hold on to them, and you have a certain responsibility towards them and towards yourself to caring for them. But the idea that we have in our culture that we have to keep people alive at all costs, and this comes from Christianity, comes from the so-called pretending sanctity of life because they don't have a
and
sanctity
this is
of
the
life.
intuition I love about you.
Yeah.
You're crystallizing exactly my emotions on this.
They have this notion of life is there's a sanctity to life. No, there isn't. Not to every life, not under all circumstances. This is the opposition to abortion. This is the opposition to assisted suicide. This is why they kept Terry Schiavo alive, if you remember that.
Oh yeah, I remember that well.
I mean, there's a point where you have to be willing to let them go, and it's not even in many cases, it's not even an issue of helping them commit suicide. It's just don't keep them alive. Don't actively work to keep them alive because there really is no point because they wouldn't want to live this life. And
it's expensive. It's a huge drain on resources because he's going to go on government resources.
Of course,
very soon.
Yeah. And of course, you don't want the flip side of the government having panels that decide who gets to stay on government resources and who doesn't, because that's the flip side of this. But if the people who love this person have decided that this is not a life worth living because he can't make the decision for himself, then there has to be the ability and the authority to be able to just let it happen, let death come.
Yep.
And this is why
we need a better mechanism to just let it happen.
Well, and as long as the government is involved, you'll never get that. And as long as Christianity is involved, you'll never get that because it really is a Christian thing. It's about,
it really is. You're right.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm sorry. It's a horrible situation to be in. I can't imagine being in that situation. And I hope I never am.
Since you and I are atheists, can I run one more thing by you?
Absolutely, sure.
One of the things that has happened in his illness is people are trying to, for lack of a better term, kidnap him in behalf of their religion.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
I find people sneaking their pastors in or posting prayers online, and we are not religious,
Yep.
don't want any part of it,
Yep.
get no comfort from it. I'm hugely offended by it.
I agree with you. But nobody cares when atheists get offended. Nobody cares.
No, nobody cares.
No,
yeah.
when Christians get offended, or Jews get offended, or Muslims get offended.
In a very concrete way, it turns them into an imposter.
Yep. No, I agree with you. I hate
this
that.
person, they pretend it's him, it wasn't him.
I agree with you. I hate that. And it's
yeah.
And you got to just confront the people doing it. And if you're the primary responsibility for his care, then it's your call and not theirs. And it has to be made very clear to them.
Absolutely.
And it's difficult.
Absolutely. I've had good luck telling people not to, post their religious messages on our social media.
Yeah, if they want to do it on their page, let them do it on their page. But it's not you. Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep. I agree.
But yeah, quality of life is a huge issue in objectivism. I've never liked Ayn Rand's fiction. It's funny you were talking about fiction earlier, but I've always had this intuitive agreement with the idea of objectivism.
I mean, I loved her fiction. I wouldn't be here if not for her fiction. Her fiction is what made me, that's what gets me going. But yeah, however you get here, you're on our side, and I agree with you completely. It's about quality of life. It's about getting the most out of your life, and when the time comes where you can't flourish, then survival is not worth it. Then it's time to end it.
Can't flourish.
Yep.
You move on. It's okay.
Yep.
Man, he had a full life.
Exactly.
Man,
Death is
loved
okay.
Him so much.
Death is
loved
okay.
him.
Actually,
I honor his memory.
I appreciate that. Good.
It doesn't diminish him to let him go.
No, not at all. Not at all.
All right.
I appreciate the call. I appreciate you listening. And keep living. Keep living with the fullest meaning of what that means, the fullest meaning of that term. Somebody was asking, let me just see. Where was it? Somebody was asking a question about death. But here it is. Please talk about objectivist view on death and dying. So I figure I'll talk about that in this context. I mean, my view on death and dying, and Ayn Rand, Ayn Rand didn't talk much about this, right? Because I think her view was, particularly earlier in their life, her view was, who cares, right? It's not something you think about. You want to avoid it. You want to avoid it. It's not something you want. And the whole perspective of the philosophy, goes back to the issue of suffering. The whole perspective of Ayn Rand's philosophy is on living. It's on attaining happiness. It's on flourishing. It's on surviving qua human being, which means flourishing. It's about being alive and living. And death is just something that happens. And it's inevitable. And it will happen. But you don't want to happen. You want it to happen later rather than sooner, because life is to be lived and it's to be enjoyed. Ayn Rand had this great line about when you die, it's not you that's ended, it's the world that's ended. And that's a great sentiment. I mean, the idea is you can only experience the world through you. You can only experience your world with your consciousness. Once your consciousness is gone, the world is gone. There is nothing. So what that meant for her primarily was that her entire focus was on being alive and enjoying life and having that, embracing life fully perspective. And the death was incidental and unimportant. And the same with suffering. Suffering existed, and suffering could be so bad that you would want to end your life. But suffering was incidental. It was unimportant to living life. You didn't define your life by your suffering. And everybody suffers at some point. We all experience pain. That doesn't make it fundamental. It doesn't make it the primary. What is the primary is the living, the enjoying, the embracing of life, that vigor around life. And you don't live to run away from the suffering. You live because it's life. Ayn Rand was clearly saddened by the death of her husband. I mean, it really crushed her. It was really, really difficult for her because she loved him so much, and because her life was so intertwined with his life was so intertwined with hers. And so I think death became more real to her then, and she also was getting older, so her own death was becoming real. But it still wasn't a focus. I mean, her missing her husband was, but the focus wasn't on, oh my God, I'm going to die soon. The focus was on, what should I do tomorrow to live? What should I do tomorrow to live? What productive thing could I engage in now? What do I want to write? What do I want to speak about? What do I want to think? What do I want to experience now? So I can live, so I can embrace life. So that's the focus. I think that's my answer to Tom, who asked about death and dying. But if you want to follow up, you can call or you can write another question. All right. Hi, you're on the Yaron Brook Show. Who's this?
Hey, Yaron, it's Dave from New York.
Hey, Dave. How are you? You always confuse me because you've got that 415 area code. I'm thinking,
I know, it's that old Bay Area.
Who's
code,
this calling me from the Bay Area? And it's always Dave from New York. Very confusing.
I just wanted to ask about the package deal of selfishness and narcissism that I've been having a hard time, at least when I got into objectivism, and even still today, I still have a hard time kind of unpackaging that package deal, because I see a lot of like self-absorbed behavior, and I want to call people out as selfish, but I know they're not really being selfish. That's just narcissism, like an underdeveloped sense of self or an insecurity. But it strikes me as selfish, and as opposed to like, a billionaire who's very successful. I don't see him as like an evil, selfish person. It's just someone pursuing their rational self-interest. Yeah. I don't know if you could unpackage that. That would. So
you're bringing up an interesting point, and I think we have a lack of concepts or poverty of concepts in this case. So. And I think the poverty of concept is because that's what the altruists want. So if you think about it, traditionally what we have is altruism, selfishness, and the altruist could say any non-altruistic behavior is selfish, and that was it. And then they could lump up, they could lump Steve Jobs with Bernie Madoff, and they're both selfish, and they don't care because they really don't like Steve Jobs because he was selfish, and they really don't like Bernie Madoff because he was, a criminal. And they could say, but the behavior behind it all is all the same. And what Ayn Rand is doing is she is breaking up that package deal that the altruists have created around the term selfish. But what she doesn't really do is create a new concept to put all the people we've thrown out of the term selfish, like the Bernie Madoffs, like Donald Trump, the narcissist, like other, self-obsessed, just ugly people who do things that are driven by emotional selfishness, although emotional selfishness is not selfishness. But again, we're lacking a concept. So people who are driven by their emotions, not by their reason. So Ayn Rand said, if you're driven by your reason, you're selfish, right? And you can only be selfish by using your reason. So anybody who's being driven by the emotions is by definition not being selfish, according to Ayn Rand. But what are they, you point out? Because they're not altruistic, right? We know that. They're not sacrificing for some greater good or for some other people. They're just being self-obsessed. And we're lacking a term. And I've actually pointed that out to some of our philosophers. Give me a concept, and I don't have one, and they don't have one. I use self-destructive. So I believe that but I'm not, I can't say I'm happy with the term. I'm just saying that's what I use because it's the easiest thing. And it indicates something important about the behavior. And that is that the behavior ultimately is not in the self-interest of the person engaging in that behavior. So Bernie Madoff's lying does not bring him happiness and fulfillment. It's self-destructive. The narcissist's behavior leads him to ultimately feel miserable, not to trust anybody, and to not be successful in life. You can't be successful in a narcissist except in politics and maybe in real estate development if it's very heavily regulated. Sorry. So the point is, I want to emphasize that their behavior is about self, but not about self in a positive sense, about self in a negative sense. So I call it self-destructive. But here's a call on people. It would be useful to have a term and try to inculcate it into the culture that captured, that conceptualized people who are not altruistic, but are driven by emotions that are seemingly about themselves, right? About moving themselves. And we need a term for that. And again, self-destructive is the closest I've got, but it's not fulfilling. There's something missing. I'm not smart enough to figure it out.
Solipsism. I know psychologists talk about solipsism. It's like
solipsism.
It's like other people don't even exist.
Yeah.
Right? It's like an infant. You put your hand in front of his eyes.
Yeah.
It's not that you're behind the hand. It's that you don't exist.
Yes.
I think that.
So solipsism is one form of this, but I don't think it's the only form. So I would consider solipsism as one form of the self-destructive behavior. But so is narcissism, and so is emotionalism, and so the overemphasis of emotions and using emotions as a cognitive, as if it's cognition. All of that is part of the big umbrella, which is self-destructive behavior. And then you can pass out the self-destructive behavior as being driven by solipsism or narcissism or something else. So I don't think it's a broad enough concept. So okay. I'm with you. I'm struggling with what the term should be. And I'm interested in what somebody like Greg Solomieri might think of this. So I've talked about with Ankar, and I think the best we could come up with so far is self-destructive. But maybe I'm wrong. Don't attribute that answer to Ankar because he might have a great answer. But I think we need that. I think it's conceptually easier to hold if we had three concepts: altruism, selfishness, as Ayn Rand defines it, and a third concept, call it self-destructiveness, right? Something that captures that view. Those are the three. And I think those are the three. The question is that the best concept to use for the third one? Maybe I'll ask Leonard. I mean, Leonard Peikoff might have a good idea. He's good at these kind of things in terms of terminology. Let me ask him.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask him.
Okay.
Because I think you're on to something real. This is not. I think it's important because it helps us think. So that our concepts are tools of cognition, and if we have an ambiguity about a concept, that makes it more difficult to think.
Right. Totally agree. And just one more question. I don't know if you addressed this earlier in the show about Trump's executive order, like kind of throwing a wrench in Obamacare.
Yeah, let's do this. I'm going to talk about that extensively tomorrow on my Blaze show at 9 a.m. So let me skip this question because I got a bunch of others and we're almost done with the show. And let me leave the Obamacare stuff for tomorrow, where I'll actually say something nice about Trump. So I'll leave that for tomorrow's show. All right.
Okay. Hey, well, thanks so much.
Sure. Thanks for calling, Dave. Really appreciate it. All right, we got a couple more questions, and we got about 20 minutes, so we're going to try to do this quickly. Hi, you're on the Yaron Brook Show. Who's this?
Yaron, it's Jonathan Honig.
Hey, Jonathan. How are you?
Good. I'm really enjoying the show. Thank you so much for all the material you put out in helping to really foster a movement, a worldwide movement. And I'll definitely be sharing and spreading many more of your broadcasts.
And you do already, so thank you, Jonathan. Thank you for everything you do to promote objectivism. Go ahead.
Well, quick question for you. Do you think that there is any value, not in terms of spreading objectivism, but simply in learning about and understanding Ayn Rand? Do you think that there is any value in learning about and studying her affair with Brandon? Is there or is there not? And if there is, what resources do you think one should look at to study that part in her life?
Wow. I mean, I think there is probably. I mean, I have to say I'm not particularly interested in that issue to some extent, because I've come to the conclusion that Brandon was a really, really bad guy, and that he used and manipulated Ayn Rand. And as smart as she is, I think she was very vulnerable and open to manipulation. And the more I learn about it, the more I discover that, and that just makes me really, really sad that to this great woman, you know, the most important figure in my life, in all of my life, that she was treated that badly by Brandon. So that's enough for me. Do I need to understand all the details, the psychology, all of that? No. Do I need to fully understand why Ayn Rand had a relationship with two men at the same time and all that? No. I mean, she was a genius and an unconventional thinker. And to imagine a genius, unconventional thinker leading a conventional life when it came to sex would be bizarre to me. I mean, I consider people as integrated, and she was experimenting and she was trying and she was pushing the envelope, and that makes sense given who she was. I don't think monogamy is the answer. The issue of monogamy, I don't think is an easy issue. I don't think it's self-evidently simple. So I don't find delving into the particulars of the affair interesting, but that's just me. I think some people who are interested in psychology might find it interesting. If you do find it interesting, then I think the best is to go to original sources as much as possible, rather than rely on other people's stories about it. Or, Ayn was very private, but she also had a journal where she wrote everything. And Brandon wrote a biography, so you can find out what his thoughts are, at least years later, about the whole thing. But I wouldn't rely on other people writing about it. I would go to, as much as possible, to original sources. Some of those original sources are available because of James Valiant's work. So certainly I would read James Valiant's book and delve into that material. And then there's a lot of other resources, I think, in the archives, some of them available, many of them not available. And one day in the future, more of the material will be made available, and somebody will be able to do more research into the whole affair. Plus, I think we're going to get the Brandon's archives. So at some point, you'll have Nathaniel Brandon's papers and Barbara Brandon's papers. So I think to really, really investigate the whole issue, which I don't think is an inappropriate thing to do, because these are important people, and understanding their lives is not insignificant. I think there's value there. But to do that, you would have to really do your research. And you'd have to have a psychologist by your side, or be a psychologist, because this is about psychology. And you would have to read the original papers that Ayn Rand wrote and the original papers the Brandons wrote, and you'd have to really build from that what really happened and figure out what really happened. Does that answer your question, Jonathan? What's that?
Thank you very much for the response.
Sure. Of course. Anytime, Jonathan. We're going to be in Chicago soon, so hopefully I'll get to see you.
Looking forward to it. Thank you, Ron.
Thanks, Jonathan. All right, we got one more caller. I think probably our final caller of the evening. Hi, you're on the Yaron Brook Show. Who's this?
Hi, Yaron. This is Poetic Pete. I'm calling from Germany.
Oh, hey, Germany. It's what, 2, 3 a.m. in the morning?
Yeah, I know. I had to set the alarm just to catch you.
Oh my God! All
We
right.
actually met once. We actually met once before in Dublin.
Okay.
When you were coming through with, that was last year when you came in with a couple of free market people.
That's right.
I was the young fella who asked that question about Plato, which which the libertarians were a bit
Oh yeah.
confused by.
Yeah, you were pushing the
Yeah,
libertarians' buttons, and it worked well.
Yeah. Yeah. Just a quick follow-up to Stuart, and then I'll ask my question. I actually came up with the term to describe what Stuart mentioned earlier, the follow the money epistemology.
Say that
Because
again. I
that's
didn't
what
understand that. Say that again.
The follow the money epistemology.
Okay.
Because that's, I think, what the libertarians and a lot of these conspiracy theories people use in order to explain the world.
Well, that's
It's
materialism.
Everything can be explained in terms of what, follow the money, and then that's how they explain everything. That's just something I came up with.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that's right. I think it comes from their inherent materialism, the fact that they don't value philosophy and they don't believe that the world is shaped by ideas. And all you have when you don't have ideas is money. It's a material reality around you, and that's absolutely right. I like follow the money epistemology. I like that. Good.
Yeah, and I have one question about the history of philosophy.
Yep.
Because I'm working on a philosophy series which I'm uploading on YouTube right now. It's called Philosophy at Work.
Okay.
And I'm currently working on an episode which is going to be published in a couple of weeks. I've got new ones coming out weekly. It's about Aristotle and the decline of the Greeks. And I've got a theory on it, and I wanted to hear your thoughts about it, what you think of it.
Well, let me, before you even give me the theory, let me say I am not an expert, not on the philosophy and not on the history.
Yeah, I know.
So anything I say is my whatever. Take it for what it's worth.
I think you are, considering how much you deal with all this stuff.
Yeah.
And even if you're not an expert, I still value your opinion. So the idea is, why didn't the Greeks pick up Aristotle? And my theory is that the reason is not philosophical but historical. And I know that Leonard Peikoff also was somewhat struggling in the history of philosophy series with that question.
Yep.
And my idea is that secular society, if they cannot establish a stable political order and then get subjected to the carnage and destruction, the self-immolation, in effect, that results from that, they cannot recover from that psychologically, and they start to withdraw from the world. They stop having children. I noticed that because in the history books it says that about the Greeks right after the Peloponnesian Wars. It says that about the Romans during the 1st century BC, when they were fighting one civil war after the other. It's true about Europe after World War I.
Yep.
And
today,
they start to withdraw. They start to replace achievement with the quiet life. They start to go away from happiness. They go towards momentary pleasures. They want it's all this withdrawal, the psychological withdrawal from the world. And I think that's an inherent, or might just be an inherent aspect of a secular society, that once it does that to itself on such a large scale, it's large-scale self-immolation caused by civil wars or senseless wars abroad, that it cannot recover from that. And that's why the ancient Greeks couldn't pick up Aristotle. That was just not.
It was too, as I think Leonard says, it was too late for them. It was too late.
Yeah. And
because of the Peloponnesian Wars.
Plato, and they went for Epicurus.
Yep.
and then the cycle just intensified later with the Romans. And then people turn to a view of the world which can tolerate endless war, destruction, civil disorder, which is this religious view of the world where you don't care about this world. You wouldn't expect this world to be any good. You wouldn't expect to achieve anything in this world because you've given up on it. So what do you think?
I like this. I like your theory a lot. I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think you're seeing it in Europe right now. I think that there was a certain optimism post World War II, and I'm not sure what kind of the trigger has been. I think it's just a lack of any positive ideology. I think it's just but over the last 30, 40 years, you've just seen the withering of Europe, and birth rates are plummeting, and everything you've said, the focus on short term. So I think you're onto something really, really important. I'd love to see it in writing, and I'd love to see the timeline. But I think that's right. There's something about all there is this world. They're discouraged about this world because of the Civil War or because of the bloody events that they're engaged in. But so here's a question for you. How do you explain the Enlightenment? Because think about the Enlightenment. Maybe it's because they were religious, and that would be interesting if you could make that connection. But think about the Enlightenment. So they were coming out of the 30-year war, probably the bloodiest war in human history on a per capita basis, in terms of the number of people killed per capita. And it was a religious war, and it was a civil war because it was within Europe. It was one part of Germany and one part of Holland and fighting the other parts. And yet the resolution of that is into Aristotle, right? Into the Enlightenment, into capitalism, into freedom ultimately. So I'm wondering if that contradicts your theory or not.
Yeah, I thought about that too, but I believe that's a transition point. You don't have really a secular society destroying itself, but you have the last remnant of this medieval tradition destroying itself.
That's right.
And then the secularists have one more reason to go in and say, let's stop with this nonsense and try something else.
You got to write this. You got to write an article about this. This is really good stuff.
Well, you'll see my final version of it in episode 5, which will be coming out in 2 or 3 weeks. Episode 3 is coming out tomorrow.
Okay.
Philosophy at Work. It's on YouTube.
I'll check it out, and everybody should check it out. Philosophy at Work. Yeah, no, I find that very convincing. Again, I'm not an expert, but I find that convincing. I think it's consistent also with. It's probably consistent with Leonard's dim hypothesis. Have you read the dim hypothesis?
Sure, I have.
Yeah. So I think it's consistent with that because I think you could probably overlap that with the discussion about DIM and what's coming from what into what, and of course Leonard talks about that as well. So, all right, great. I mean, I love to hear about good work being done. So congratulations, keep it up, and I look forward to watching your YouTube series.
Well, thanks. I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you. Absolutely. Good. Well, thanks everybody. Thanks for listening. We've got just a couple of minutes, and we really should. I need to leave some space here. Great questions. Great audience. A few trollers here and there. I see on Facebook and on YouTube. Hopefully you enjoyed this. If you did, here's a project somebody could take on. Take the video on YouTube, download it. Split it up to make every question a different video, and then send that, make it available to me so I can upload those individual videos up into my YouTube channel. That'd be a great project if somebody wanted to volunteer to help me out. That would be perfect. But short of that, what did I say? Share, and subscribe. We need to get my subscriptions up on YouTube to over 10,000, which is still low. Like all these other guys have over 100,000. And we need to get my Facebook likes up to, or follows or whatever it's called, up to over 100,000. We need to do the same on YouTube. So get the word out there. Help us grow this movement. help us grow my audience, because I think it's in your self-interest to grow my audience, because the more people we can convince that these ideas are true, that these ideas are right, the better potentially your life is going to be. So if we can build a movement that actually goes out there and works to change the world, we can win this. We can win this. We just need the generals and the troops and the colonels and the majors. We need everybody engaged in the war of ideas. And it's not a battle, because battles you can lose, wars you can't lose. You can't afford to lose the war. You can lose a battle, but we're engaged in a war. This is going to take a long time. Yes, I'm asking for free stuff from you. I'm asking you to volunteer to help yourself by helping me. Yep. And I'm going to ask you soon to support my Patreon initiative. So I'm going to launch a Patreon page probably next week. And I'm going to ask you to support that, to write checks to the Institute, to the Ayn Rand Institute, and to support my Patreon page, to do both. So I'm going to actually ask you for money. Oh my God. I didn't know objectivists were allowed to do that. All right, everybody. This was fun. I hope you had fun. We will talk, I'm sure, soon. Oh, tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Pacific time, I do the show for the Blaze, and I'll talk about Obamacare, and I've got a whole list of things I want to talk about. We'll talk about Trump on Obamacare, Trump on Iran, Trump on the UN. We'll see what else I have to talk about. Maybe taxes. I have to talk about Harvey Weinstein. So just for the Harvey Weinstein segment, you should tune in to the show tomorrow. And again, share. Love you guys, or at least the ones of you worth loving. And I will be back with you tomorrow morning. And I'm sure I have some exit music here, the same as my intro music. Have a great weekend, everybody.